Hello, everybody. This is Bob Hollis. Welcome to the first in our series of web development classes. Just a quick orientation for any of you who've not used GoToMeeting before. Everybody's muted by default whenever they come into the webinar, and that's because it can hold up to 1,000 people, and sometimes you'll get a lot of background noise, even if people aren't speaking. So to try to keep that controlled, everybody is on mute by default. And if you ever encourage questions, so you can ask questions by entering them into the panel, and you can also raise your hand. So sometimes I might not see those right away because I'm focused on the content that we're talking about, but I will pay attention. And the other thing that you should know that's a little bit different about this class than other classes that you might have been in with me is because we kept this to the size that we did, and there's a fee charged for it that made it much more manageable. I can spend a lot more one-on-one time with everybody. So if you don't catch something in the class and the question didn't get answered, or the question might arise after the class, then feel free to let me know, and we can schedule some time to get together one-on-one through the system. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So I will try to keep my eye open for hands raised. And if your panel seems to have disappeared, look for the little orange tab with the white arrow, and that might open it again for you. Or if it seems to have gone away completely from your screen, it's probably because there's a window open in front of it. And all you have to do in that case is go down into your taskbar and click on the icon, and that'll bring your panel right back up to the front for you. So that should take care of that. Today's mostly an orientation day. It is being recorded, so I'll make it available to everybody. In fact, we'll be going through some of those documents, and I'll show you exactly where. And then we can, I'll give you a place to get all of that after the class, so that you don't have to figure out where to go. So that's all on the system. It's pretty straightforward and easy to use. So to go over the syllabus, there were some changes in dates. Those were a little while back, so you're probably all caught up. But just to refresh and give an overview of what we're going to be doing, I'm the instructor, Bob Hollis. I'm CEO of Mobius Intelligent Systems. I'll tell you a little bit more about my background in a minute. But just to go over the class itself, here's our schedule. So tonight we're going to be doing an orientation session. And originally this was going to be at California Capitol, but I was recruited to do a bunch of events at Carnegie Mellon University. So I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Washington, DC for 3 weeks, and currently broadcasting from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So what we'll be covering tonight is domain registration, hosting and security, and a general overview of web structure and technology, just so people get an understanding of how it all works. And when I say security, it's because security is something that should be thought of at every phase of web development or anything else you're doing online. If any of you have attended my classes on cybersecurity, you understand how dangerous it can be out there, and not everybody's a white hat. So that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. Now, these are the fundamentals of getting a website set up. So starting as if nobody has any experience at all, they don't have a domain, they don't have hosting. Ideally, you do. If not, you should try to have it by next week. But if you need help with that, what we can do is even schedule time one-on-one where I get online with you, just like the system that we're using, and you can show me your screen and we can walk right through. And that way you don't have to give me your usernames and passwords and that sort of thing. But I can walk you through it, and you're just doing everything and putting your credit card in to buy the services or whatever you might need. And just also to be clear, anything that I refer in this class, like if I talk about using a certain hosting company, certain domain registration system, I don't make any money off of those. I know some people set up affiliate accounts and then they try to get their students to sign up through all those. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to just give the best information possible for the best outcomes for all of you. And so if I mention one, I'll probably talk about that it's a usable one, but it's not the only one. And you can use any one that you're comfortable with as long as it meets the standards. And I'll point out a few that I've used frequently just so you know that they're fairly reliable and have been tested. So that's what we'll be working on tonight. And ideally by this time next week, you'll at least have a platform up. And that's when we'll start getting into content management systems and how to use them and how well we'll get started working on them. And between now and then, you're also going to get a survey from me. You'll find that I do a lot more than just the web stuff. I've started several companies myself with like basically zero startup funds, and grew one of them to be the largest in the country in a specific segment. And actually, my second one is also became the largest in a specific segment. And I think that that's the key. That's the key. I have a formal education in marketing, and if you go back to the really the father of marketing as a classical area of study is Philip Kotler. He taught undergrad. Well, his books were those that I used as a business major undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, studying marketing and information systems. And then at grad school in the MBA program at University of Chicago, they had his same books. And he was right up the road in Northwestern, where I believe he still is today. But his studies originated the field of marketing as a subject matter of study in universities. And if you read through his works and you hear him talk about the best way for a small unknown company to make it big, it's by really finding a little niche that's underserved and focusing on that niche so that you can become the provider to that market. And so we'll talk more about those things as we go. But I'm going to be sending a survey to all of you because one, I want to see where you are technically, where you're at in terms of readiness for the class. And again, I'm expecting everybody to be at 0. So don't think you're behind. You're never behind. You're just not caught up yet. So it'll help you get to wherever you need to be, one-on-one as needed. And so anyway, we'll get through all that. Don't worry about it. The last thing you should be stressed about this class, because it's really fun and really empowering, as long as you're not hitting brick walls and getting frustrated. And I'm going to be here to help you knock those brick walls down. So session 3, we're going to talk features and functions. And so before we get to session 3, you should think about what you would like to include in your website. What is the primary function of your site? Are you doing e-commerce? Is it an online, basically portfolio for your consulting services? Is it a nonprofit organization with fundraising? Is it event registration? Whatever it might be. So think about what you want it to do, the market you want it to serve, and the features and functions you would like it to have. Because when we get to session 3, we'll be adding all of those in. And in fact, you can send them to me in advance, and I'll make sure that we do demos that include those specific features and functions that you want for your site, so you can see how it's done. And then if you need help actually doing it, again, we can schedule a session. You log in or make me an admin on your site, and we're going to have a action item list that I'll show you in a few minutes. And you'll each have your own list, and you can add in the action items, and I might add action items, and we can have notes back and forth to each other about what needs to be done next and keep them moving forward. Session 4 is theme design and implementation. So this one is just so expansive. There's so much you can do with the types of websites that we're going to be building, and there are thousands of free themes that you can put in there. But what we're going to do a bit differently this time is we're going to focus on a page building tool that allows you to basically go themeless, and you can just do a page at a time. And you want to have a consistent branding. We're going to talk about that. That's pretty important. So don't get me wrong. It's not that each page will look different, but what it is the theme is basically built within a framework, and that framework's replicated across pages, and it's all like drag and drop that makes the page layout really simple to create balanced and responsive pages that look good on any size device. Session 5, we're going to talk about e-commerce because that's usually a hot topic for people, and almost anybody with a website that's intended to generate revenue is going to have some form of e-commerce, whether it's again event registrations or books or affiliate types of systems like Amazon, and we'll go through a lot of different options there. I have a whole spreadsheet of different ways to make money from websites that don't cost anything to get started. And then once we have our sites built, now we want to do search engine optimization, set up analytics. And don't get scared when I talk about this. All my classes that I've done over at California Capital pretty much filled up the capacity, which is one of the reasons we started doing them online, so that we could hold more people and allow more in. But every time I've been going to do one on artificial intelligence, nobody signs up, or very few. And when asked why, they've been told that that's over their heads. Well, it's not. There are some tools out there that are made available from some of the big companies, that anybody can use, because you don't have to do the math yourself. You don't have to do all the algorithms. All you need is the data. And almost anybody has data, even if it's Google Analytics data, or whatever it might be. If you're tracking site hits, if you're tracking sales, number of people who donate, any of that. So I'll show you how to use some free AI tools with any data that you have. Now, once you've got everything set up, so we've got our site built, we've got our functions, we've got it looking good, and we're all set up now to rank highly on WordPress. Now we want to start digital outreach and promotion. So we'll talk about social media, newsletters, and bots, and social media bots like Twitter bots and Facebook bots, and how to use those appropriately, and overall outreach. So we've got our platform up. Now we need to talk about outreach and getting the word out, and we're going to integrate all of that. So all of your social media, newsletters, everything is going to be boxed into an efficient system that all operates off of your website. And I should mention the businesses that I've started. It's been me. It's not been me and a team of 30, or me and a VC or anything else. It's been started with just me, and then I start to build a team around me, and then that's what really starts to make things happen. But all of it with basically zero startup cash for the businesses. So once we then talk about the outreach and how to get things going, and the reason I mentioned that is because I've had to work very efficiently, and that's what got me started into all of these different systems. Was I wanted to be able to function like a Fortune 500 company as one person. So when I make a post to my website, I now have it set up so, well, to give an example, one of my clients is a Southern California government agency that has 26 cities, or cities, towns, special districts, and unincorporated areas that are identified. And what we have is a system where you can make a post to the website, and then that post goes into the website up live. Then it also populates a newsletter that goes out automatically to a specific list of subscribers based on the category assigned to the post. And then it also goes out to 29 Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, LinkedIn accounts, and it can go into just about any type of social media account right now. And so by pushing one button, you're generating all of that. So I call it a COPE system: create once, publish everywhere. And if you're going to be a small shop trying to get going, you don't have time to go out and log in on a bunch of different accounts and post something new every day. But this way, you have one system. You post one place, and it goes out to all of your accounts all at once. So we'll be talking about that, and that's how you start promoting your business once your website's ready to go. And then we had originally again talked about doing a review session at California Capital. I live up in the mountains west of Tahoe, and sometimes we get snowed in up here that time of year. So it may depend on the weather. But that one will either be via webinar, or I'll be at California Capital and simulcasting. So if you can't make it, you can still participate online. But if you can make it, it'd be great to see you in person and get to know you a little bit more. And then on the 20th, we'll have a final session that's just a tech support session via this system again. And I'll just be online here to answer any questions. And I'm also planning on scheduling office hours. And so we can talk about that. With the size of the class that we have, we might not need that. We might be better off just scheduling one-on-one time, as the way office hours would work is I would get online during these hours and basically sit here and see if anybody wants to log in and talk with me and ask questions. So it may be a combination of both of those, but you'll know you can find me here. To join me online during office hours, just click this link here. And again, I'm going to provide all of this to you. In fact, it'll be in, well, I'll show you where it's going to be shortly. We're getting to that in a moment. To get in on this GoToMeeting, there's a password, CalCap, with a capital C and a capital C. And so you'll have all this if you want to join me for office hours. Prerequisites are none. So, it'd be good that if you at least know how to use, are comfortable with things like Microsoft Office, Word or Facebook, just being comfortable with a browser and general computer use, we'll say, is good. But you don't have to have any other special knowledge at all. And outcomes, again, we would like to have everybody have their own website up, running, and live by the end of this course. So that's what we want to achieve, and I'm here to help you make it happen. So with that, a little bit about me again, just because I don't want to sound like this is a puff piece. I hate to promote myself, but the reason I should mention this is that I have such a diverse background. I want you to know the different things that I've done so that you have some idea of where my expertise lies and what kind of questions you might be able to ask me to get some assistance. So I did my undergrad in business and information systems at Carnegie Mellon, as I've mentioned in passing here. And then also went on to grad school at the University of Chicago, where I studied business and liberal arts. And then grad school again at Harvard, studying environmental management. And that's because I basically went through a transition in my life where as I was growing up, I always wanted to accumulate wealth, and that seemed like a great objective. And then I went through school, and I ended up starting my own business, which happened to be an executive search firm. And that's because I wanted to go to grad school and didn't know what I wanted to do after, and I felt like I didn't know anything about careers. So I thought, hey, why not get involved in the executive search business? And they were hiring, so I got the job and did pretty well. And then within just a couple of years said, you know what, I could do this myself and make a lot more money. And that's what I did. And so I stepped out and I got started in executive search, and we ended up being the largest search firm in the metals industry within 3 years, and then started expanding out beyond that into other segments. And that, for the most part, allowed me to retire financially when I was about 35. And at that point, I got involved in a lot of nonprofit work, and going back to things that were more passionate to me than making money, and changed my perspective on everything. So I ended up giving away most of the money that I'd earned before the recession, and it collapsed. But those things happened, and I lost a lot in the recession, and with what happened on Wall Street. But anyway, I had to work again, and in the meantime, I started building websites for these nonprofits on whose boards I'd served, and I was having a lot of fun with it. So I started doing all that for them for free, and the next thing you know, I needed to start making money again, and people started wanting to hire me to do it, and that's how I ended up doing what I do now. And we're probably the largest technology services to the recycling industry, certainly in California and possibly the country right now. We have clients all over. And we're expanding into artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics, blockchain technologies for security. My team now has, we've got our chief technology officer, we've got another gentleman here with 30 years of experience, and two PhD computer scientists, one from Cambridge with advanced degrees in mathematics, artificial intelligence, etc. So we've got a pretty sharp team working with me. But in this regard, I've got experience with business, technology, startups, and I've also served as an elected public official here in El Dorado County, and served on dozens of nonprofit boards, and done a lot of work in the music industry with some of my clients have won Grammy Awards, and I host or helped put together a festival called the Hangtown Halloween Ball. Well, now it's the Hangtown Music Festival. We're on our 9th year coming up. So diverse range and background, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about your business and how to get things moving if you're trying to build something up and you've not done it before. So today specifically, and let me take a pause here first and see if there are any questions. If you've got any questions, feel free to submit them at any time or raise your hand. And I'm going to pop those boxes out so I can keep an eye on that. And I apologize in advance if you raise your hand and I don't see it right away. Just be patient and I'll get right back to you. Oh, I see a question coming in, a hand raised. So Julie, I can unmute you or you can submit a question through the question panel. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Julie, can you hear me okay? Oh, okay, maybe that's an inadvertent hand raised. Julie, I'm going to put your hand back down in case, oh, looks like you did. Okay, so if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and raise your hand or submit those. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started here. Seeing none, we'll move on. So, oh, I see a hand again. Okay. And Julie, you're unmuted. Would you like to ask a question? Okay. And Julie, if you can hear me, but you're unable to speak into your microphone for some reason, feel free to type your question into the question box. All right, so moving on then. So today we're going to cover the fundamentals and talk a little bit about the software that we're using, and then we're going to go through the steps you see right here. So some people don't understand how it all fits together, and I think this session will help bring some clarity to that. The first thing you want to do is register a domain, and the domain is, you know, the URL, the address that you go to, bobhollis.com, cacapital.org. That's your domain. When you're registering a domain, there's a lot to consider really. But if you're a business, obviously you want a domain that identifies similarly to your business. You know, if you're a pizza shop, you'd love to have the word pizza in the domain somewhere or something along those lines. The other things you want to think about is try not to ever use any hyphens to, you know, where we're this-this.org.com.net. Always try to get a top level domain if you can, but that is changing a bit. So where in the past almost everybody wanted a .com, if you're a nonprofit, a .org, and then of course there's specialty domains like .gov, but you have to actually officially be a government organization and they cost a lot of money. But usually if you're a commercial business, you want a .com. So if you don't get that, then a lot of people want to go with the .net. .net originally represented basically an internet business. So that's appropriate for anything that you're doing online, especially if it's only online and not a brick and mortar building. But the other thing you have to consider is that somebody else has that .com. And if they're a competitor, that obviously wouldn't be good for you if somebody was accidentally going to their site instead of yours whenever they're doing a search. So if you're going to register a domain and you don't have the .com, then you want to check out the .com and make sure they're not direct competition. And if they aren't, if they're in a completely different business, then you're okay, because you can do search engine optimization to make sure your site comes up instead of theirs, just by more differentiating your products and making sure that they fit the keywords that you want, and then you don't have to worry about it. The other thing is the fewer syllables, the better. So just think about if there's something that people have to remember, the shorter it is, the better. The fewer syllables, the better. And you also don't want anything with a funky spelling. So I wouldn't want to, you know, be like, I'm trying to think of an example here, like, you know, watermelon with an extra L and an extra N or something like that. Or any words that could be spelled differently, like a PH instead of an F, unless it's very clear what it should be. So you want something easy to remember, that's appropriate to your business, and as few syllables as possible, and ideally a .com for commercial or .org for nonprofit. So once you have that domain, and I'm going to show you some more, I'm going to do a quick overview here, and then we're going to jump into each one of these and actually do all this stuff. But I want to give you a feel for the big picture first, so that it might make more sense as we're doing it. So the first thing we're going to do is register that domain, and I'll show you a couple places you could do it. And then we're going to get a hosting account, talk about how you get a hosting account. And one of the features I highly recommend is Cpanel, which is prevalent. It's pretty ubiquitous. Just about every hosting company offers it or of something similar. And then we're going to talk about how you point the domain. So you've got a domain registered at one place, and you have a server at another place. And when people go to your domain, they're typing that name in, and that name is really just a mask on a number and some code that sends it someplace else. And so that's a name that's easy for people to remember, or else we would just use IP addresses and usernames. So that's what that's for. So whenever you point that domain to a particular server and somebody goes to that domain online, it directs their traffic to the right place on the internet to see your website. And that's where your web hosting account is. Sometimes those can be in the same place. For example, GoDaddy offers domain registration and they offer web hosting, but I don't know that their web hosting is the best or what you want to use it for. So a lot of people register a domain at GoDaddy and then they get their hosting somewhere else, and they just point the domain at that hosting server to get the right site up. And then after that, we're going to upload WordPress files, and we'll talk about why we're focused on WordPress and how big it is, and it's just gotten bigger very recently, more or less taking over the internet. And you might say, well, why is that important to me? I should use what gets the job done. And that's the reason it's taking over the internet, is it does get the job done, and it does it very efficiently, and there are more resources there than you can imagine. Sites that would have cost $300,000 or $400,000 to build 5 or 6 years ago, without the kind of tools that are out there now, can be built by one person with basic entry-level experience in a few days using WordPress. We're going to create a database in the backend system, and that's where you load WordPress files. And when you do that, you're creating that space where the database has a user interface on the front end, and we're going to see how that all works. And you'll have your WordPress files up, and we're going to create the database, install WordPress. Then something that most, I don't want to say entry level or even low level, the vast majority of people that just do general web development don't realize what an asset Cloudflare is. So we're going to add our site to Cloudflare, and I'll talk with you about how to do that and why it's so beneficial. And then we repoint the name servers, and now we're ready to start building the site. So where I'd like to get before the end of the night, certainly in our demo, is I'm going to walk through each of these steps. If any of you have questions, I'll pause after each step. Some of you might have already done all of this. If so, I apologize for the redundancy, but I don't want anybody to start behind. So we're starting with this. And if you feel this is below you for this part because you've already done all this and you already have your site or something like that, I won't take offense if you drop off. I understand people have schedules and busy time. I'd love for you to stay, don't get me wrong, but I certainly don't take offense if you feel like, okay, I've done this part, I'll jump in for class 2, where we're going to dig in deeper on the things I need to know. And if you ever have to miss a class, that's not a big deal either. We're going to be recording all of the sessions. This one's being recorded right now. And as I showed you on the syllabus, we have a link here already where you can go to view these. And what I should probably do, I'm going to copy that right now. I didn't mean to do all that, but what's going to happen is you can see here, this is the California Capital Web Development Series. So I'm going to send this link out right now through our chat box, and you're going to see that on your screen. Okay, so I just set out a link in the chat box. And what I would suggest is, I'm using Chrome here, but you can do it in any browser. I really believe in folder systems. I don't like leaving anything hang out there that anybody can see when I'm showing my screens because I don't like them to know what software I'm using. As I mentioned, I teach cybersecurity, and the more people know about that, the more vulnerable you are. But I have folders. So, for example, I can go into clients, and then I go into a client, and I keep things there. If you organize things in folders, you can go vertical and always have everything you need right at hand. And so I suggest doing a folder for this class. And then as I send you links, you can open them up and then just bookmark them and drop them into your folder. For example, I have one under Learning Management Systems, CapTech Series Session 1. And so if I wanted to save this, which I probably should, I could just bookmark it there and drop it into the folder. Let's see. No, it's not working. What's up with that? I think my computer's behaving badly here. Okay, I am on a. I should mention that I'm in a different environment than I usually am. Usually, I'm on a super fast 400 megabyte per second download computer, and here in Pittsburgh, my internet is not as strong. So I'll apologize in advance if my sound gets a little fuzzy. Hopefully, it will come out fine on the recording. And if I happen to drop the line, I have a backup on. Hopefully, that would drop at the same time. But if I do, I'll be right back on, and I apologize in advance for that. And hopefully, it won't be an issue. But you can click that link that I just sent out and bookmark that, and then come back in, and you'll be able to watch any of the sessions here. I'm also going to be adding a page to the California Capitol site that'll be password protected, and I'll give all of you the password, and that's where the recordings will be available as well going forward. Okay, so we covered all that, and I may as well close these as we go. Free up some. Okay. So once we get through all of that, then we'll be ready to roll. And I have also set up folders for everybody. So after this session, sometime between now and the next session, I'm going to be sharing each of these folders with you. Now, I noticed from your registrations that many of you have Gmail addresses. If you don't have a Gmail address, I'd suggest creating one. They're free, and they come with a lot of free tools. And if anyone ever shares a Google Doc with you with that address, then you'll be able to edit that document directly. And there's a few things we're going to be doing with those docs just for communication purposes. So, for example, let's suppose Veronica and I are working on her site, and she says, "Oh, I'd like some nice images up here. I know what I'd like. Can you put them into a slider for me and add them on the front page?" So what I would do in that case is I'd say, "Sure, Veronica. What I'd like you to do is upload them into our shared folder. I'll get the images from there. And then as I'm performing the task and adding them to the slideshow, I'm going to record myself doing that. And then I'm going to add that recording to Veronica's website on an admin page in the backend. So the next time that Veronica wants to add a slide to a slideshow, she'll know how to do it. She can watch the recording if she needs to. So if you don't have a Google account, I can share it with you through just a regular email, but you'll be less secure because what I would have to do is make it shareable to anybody with a link, even if they don't have a Gmail account. So anybody who happened to get a hold of that link could open that folder and mess around with your files. Now, not likely to happen, if you don't share it with anybody, but it would be remiss of me not to let you know that before you might want to go in that direction. Within that folder, I'm also going to add the documents that we've been looking at. So the web development, this series, session 1, session 2, I'll add those in as we go. And I will also add the syllabus that has these links for, again, office hours. And these two, by the way, are changing. That should be more aligned with this class schedule. So I'll update that before I put it into your folders. All right, and this document also everybody will have. And so in here, you're going to see action item, category, and this will be empty, so you can type in anything you like there. This is basically going to break it down into whether it's a theme or function or other. Whether I added it or you added it, I think it's mostly going to be you this case. These are forms I put together to work with my clients. And then I have drop downs with their names and things so they don't have to type. There'll be a date picker here. And you might learn little things as we go. Like, for example, that you can insert date pickers. You can insert, say here, ready to publish. So one of the things that's kind of fun to use in a spreadsheet is checkboxes. I can say insert checkbox. I can take this whole line, say insert checkbox. And now you can check off whether or not something's done. So if we went down these action items and made a list of everything that needs to be done before your website goes live, then we can stay in communication with notes to each other. If you're referencing a page, for example, if you come in and say, Bob, can you add a slideshow to the page on beekeeping, whatever it might be, then I'm going to track who it's, and some of this might go away. It's not as important if it's just two people. I often work with large teams. And so it's who's it who's it for, when was it added, when's it due, is it completed or not, what's the status, is the page ready to publish? And where I was trying to get to was all the way over here. If you do have a page or something you'd like me to work on, or you have a question about, please open that page, copy the URL, and paste it in so I can go directly to that page and not have to try to figure out which page you're talking about. So each of you, again, will have a form like this within your folders, and we'll have some basic things over here to get done to get the site up and running. And then you can add, for example, say before we come into session 3, you could add a list of the functions that you want to include in your site. And if everybody can do that before session 3, then that will determine the agenda for session 3. And we'll go through and I'm sure there'll be a lot of overlap, and we'll go through and do a demo of installing each of those functions. And a lot of them can be done amazingly fast, as you'll be able to see shortly. Okay, just checking in, see if there's any questions or hands. Making sure I'm not losing anybody. And we're looking good so far. Okay, so moving on. So as we talked about, one of the first things you want to do is register your domain. And one of the more popular places to do that is GoDaddy. So you can come in and register anything that you like that's available. You do your domain search here. So if you, let's give an example. I'll just do pretty flowers. I don't know what made me think of that, but anyway. So that's available for sale, sure. 12,500, that's all. But you can see all the different options, and where somebody might go with prettyflowers.co or prettyflowers.shop. Those are obviously getting away from the more top level domains. And what you have to remember is, again, if you go with prettyflowers.mobi and somebody else has prettyflowers.com, chances are when a user, if they're not clicking on a direct link, goes to find something, they're going to type prettyflowers.com by habit. And you can use SEO. It won't hurt you for that reason, but it's just also not good to be in competition with somebody with a domain that close to yours. But that gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So you can do the search to see if the domain's available. If so, go ahead and add it to your cart. They're going to try to sell you a whole bunch of things that you probably don't need, like mail and I don't even know what else, protection and privacy. Now, there is something to be said for privacy. And that is, and I see a question came in. I'll get to you in 1 second. So privacy is something I think they charge $8 or $9 per year for. And what that means is that if somebody tries to look up your domain and see who owns it, which I can show you how to do here in a minute, that's pretty easy to do. And you can find out who owns it, and then they will solicit you. So you might start getting a whole bunch of emails from people trying to get you to buy a domain from them. you'll get mail, hard mail saying your domain's about to expire. If you'd like to re-register, renew it, then fill out this form. And it's really somebody trying to get your business away from the current registration person. So basically it opens you up to solicitation. Now you can pay extra for that privacy, or you can go to Name Silo, which is one I've started using a lot more recently. It has less fancy interface. It's not trying to oversell you on everything, and it includes privacy for free. So it's a pretty good deal, I think. And I've started using that instead of GoDaddy lately. But GoDaddy is the most popular, most highly used, and that's because it works well. So that's the Name Silo I haven't had any problem with. Don't get me wrong, but um, GoDaddy does just have a wider user field, and if you know GoDaddy, you can probably use any one on any other site. So a question just came in. Can a website allow one-time use for coupons, for example? I think I get what you mean. Tell me if I got this wrong. But so what you're talking about is if you wanted to sell something on a website, could somebody come in and use a coupon, and you could limit the number of times that coupon could be used? Is that, if that's correct, then yes, you can. Yes. So there are different ways to do that. You can issue things that have specific codes to them, for example, and then you could set up like a gravity form, and we'll go through gravity forms when we get to our plugins. It's what I think is by far the best form maker there is out there. And within gravity forms, you can set it so that each entry has to be unique. So for example, I do voter systems for a lot of people, and they want each voter to have a unique ID, but that's not attached to the voter name. So you generate the IDs, you give them out to everybody, they come in and vote, and they use that user ID to validate their ballot, so we don't have people spamming the ballot. But if somebody tried to enter that same ID again, it'll reject it and say it can't be used. And so with Gravity Forms, there's also a WooCommerce product option. So you could put in that product option, you could say enter the coupon code, and you could set that coupon code to only work once, and that would do it. And I believe you can also issue coupons with, say, the same number, promo 2020 spring, something like that, and say put a limit on that. So you could say it can only be used 100 times, and then we're rejecting it. So you can control that a bit. Another question, can multiple domain sellers sell the same domain name? Well, not really. Well, they can offer it for sale, but only one controls it at the time. So when you talk about domain sellers, what often happens is, let's say I have, for example, more than 300 domains, and a lot of those aren't being used for anything right now, but I know they're valuable and I got them in the 90s. So I don't want to just give those up. But what I could do is if I said, hey, I'm not using it, if I got the right price, sure, why not? So I take something like a prettyflowers.com, and I could register it on numerous auction sites for, say, $17,500, I think is what they were asking. And I can register it and see if anybody bites. You never know. I think the most famous one was drugs.com that some kid in Arizona registered. He was a teenager and he just registered right away when people started registering domains. And when he did, he ended up selling it for more than $1 million or something. Was pretty wealthy before he left high school. But if you put it out on all those, then once it's sold, it's off the market. So multiple domain sellers can advertise the same domain, but they don't all control the domain. That's generally done by not register.com. It's I can't believe I can't think of the name of it now. Internet, yeah, that might be it. Internet, that controls the whole kind of world's domain registration system. You have to have that organized at some level. And I think it used to be controlled by the United States until like 5 years ago or something. But anyway, they overall manage the system, and they have meetings and they come together and figure out what needs to be done to keep the system scalable. So multiple domain sellers could advertise the same domain, but they can't sell it. Okay, and here is another follow-up question. I think I understand. I was thinking more of a GoDaddy and name silo, but you've definitely answered the question. Thank you. Okay, got it. And so GoDaddy and name silo are also just interfaces. So they don't own the domain you're trying to buy. So if I go in and I do a search here, here's fielddata.com. I don't know why that's there. I must have looked for it. I can go here and see if it's available. And it's going to tell me no, I assume, because that's a pretty common name. Yeah, so it's not showing any of those available. And then they're trying to, of course, sell me something else. So let's say I wanted to know who owns that. Now, if I went to GoDaddy, it'd be the same thing. If that domain's not registered, what these do is they look back into the master database for all registered domains and see if they're registered, basically. That's a bit of a simplification, but it serves the purpose of the conversation here. So they check to see if the domain's registered or not. If it's not, then you can register it. Once you register it, it's off the market. And the same thing would happen with GoDaddy. You know, if I went to prettyflowers.com, again, this is what happens. And that would be the same thing with name silo. It would say it's available like this, or it's just not available at all. Now, if I want to see who owns a domain, and I'm going to do this to give you some insights into how it all works to further answer your question. So if I go into, say I want to know who owns this, again, I saved my bookmark. So I'm going here to DNS tools, and I'll show you, I'll provide some pretty cool tools for you as we go. And this one is one of my favorites. Most of these types of things are all over the place, and you don't know where to go. So these people are great. View DNS info, it's all free. And what you can do is find out who owns a domain. So if I want to know who owns prettyflowers.com, and this is where that privacy thing comes into play, because it might be a private registry, but let's see who owns it. If I say go, now it's telling me, okay, that it's on GoDaddy. So that's where it's registered right now. You can see that it's it's registered at GoDaddy. Now, if I go down here, you can see what the rules. Here are the name servers. So that's the server where it's hosted. And they're not telling us much more. So this must be a private information system where they're hiding it, again, paying for that privacy. But often you can see the person's name. And this same system that they search to find this is the same that GoDaddy or NameSilo would use to see if a domain's registered or not. But it's not like, you know, one holds this domain and nobody else can sell it. That doesn't exist. Okay, another question. What if you have already registered the domain and hosting through GoDaddy? Can it be changed to another host? Yes. So there's always a process where you can migrate it from one domain host to another. You want to be careful when you do that, because they want to make sure that somebody's not hijacking a domain, you know, where you're trying to basically steal it by getting it transferred to you. And so they usually put certain rules in place, such as when you transfer the domain, you can't make certain changes within a certain amount of time after that's been transferred. So let's say that you were going to point your domain to a particular server where you're building your website, and then you were going to move the domain from, say, GoDaddy to NameSilo. So you can go into NameSilo and they'll say, you know, start the transfer process. They'll make a request to GoDaddy for the transfer. You would log in on GoDaddy and tell them that you want to authorize the transfer, and they'll give you like a code, and you go back and forth a couple times to verify everything, and then they'll transfer that over. But sometimes they'll have rules in place where if you migrate a domain from one registration service to another, then you can't change the IP for 30 days or something like that, because they figure if somebody's taking that domain, they're going to take it and try to point it to their site instead of yours. And that would give 30 days for them to sort out if there was a problem, I guess. But anyway, yes, it can. Sometimes they make it tricky, but you can definitely do it. All right, so not seeing any other questions on domains, we'll go ahead and go forward here. So that's how this view DNS works. And there's going to be, we'll probably use this a lot throughout the class. You can use it for mail lookup. That's what MX records are. Name servers, propagation checker. So if I've made a change and I want to know where the world thinks this website is, so I can just take prettyflowers.com and say check propagation. I want to know what servers the rest of the world's pointing to. So we obviously haven't changed anything here, so it's going to be pointing where it should be. But you can see it shows you from each city which IP address it's pointing to. So if we would migrated one site from, say, one server, because you can do that too. Let's say we had a site hosted on HostGator, and you decided that you don't like HostGator services anymore, and you want to migrate that site to GreenGeeks, then you're going to do a backup on HostGator. You're going to restore the site on GreenGeeks, and in the process, you're going to change the IP address so that in prettyflowers.com, instead of pointing to this server IP, is going to point to your new server IP. And when you change that, what happens on the internet is it's just a series of nodes, and they all talk to each other. So your computer is used to traveling a certain path to a certain place to go to this website. And it might be sitting in your cache somewhere. It might be in the system somewhere. And there's a lot of different places in the system and in your own computer where things like that cache. And so it'll only look once in a while. And if it finds it there, then all is good. But if it doesn't, and then it starts looking other places and rerouting till it finds it. And that's basically what this is. So when you first make a change, you might see that, oh, the new IPs come up in Vegas and London, but in LA and Milan, it's still pointing to the old IP. And that's why they can't see the new site there yet. And that's what that tool's for. So it's got a lot of tools. We'll be using them later in the class, so I won't spend any more time on that. All right. And then hosting, again, there are a bunch of them out there. One of the things that I would make sure of is that your hosting has Cpanel. And there's different types of hosting and different levels of hosting service. So you can see here that it can start out pretty cheap. This one's $2.95 per month. I haven't looked into what the deal is. Let's take a look at what they're advertising plans for. Now, what you're going to be looking at here is what's called basic shared hosting. And that's generally fine for most websites, depending on how much business you get. So I've had a few times I've been on these accounts, and suddenly I get a message that I'm using more than my share of the server's allocated resources. And like, why? What are you talking about? And it's like, well, because you're getting too much traffic, basically. And so you want to be careful and make sure you know how much performance you're getting with any of these less expensive sites. Again, it might be absolutely fine for what you're starting with. And one of the rules of business, especially if you're starting off on your own or just a small business trying to make it up, is cut expenses everywhere you can, and know that you can always scale up. So you might not need a $50 a month or $100 a month server right now. You might be able to do it with this $5.95 a month job. And if you get to a point where your site's too busy, then by that time you probably got the money coming in to take it to the next level. But there's no need to start with the high level and just be sinking costs that aren't needed from the start. So that gives you some idea how inexpensive hosting can be. And I'm not going to actually set up a hosting account right now. I've got too many of them. And I use virtual private servers for most of my work. And with a virtual private server, well, they're not even advertising it anymore, I don't think, because of something that happened with Cpanel recently, where they started charging for Cpanel licenses. So here you can see they've started limiting the number of Cpanel accounts you can have. It used to be unlimited with almost all of these. But they have tried to make it up with other features, and it's not the host's fault. Cpanel decided to start charging. But with these types of sites, you can see you can pay a bit more per month and have a lot more sites. So these would be, and you can use one Cpanel account. Actually, I should be more specific about that. If all the sites are yours, and you don't have multiple clients. Like mine, I have multiple clients that have no business being logged in on each other's accounts or sharing Cpanel. But if all the sites are yours, you can put in unlimited sites on one Cpanel account. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But that gives you some idea of what it can go to. And then there should be something here, if they even still have it advertised, is a VPS server, virtual private server. And that's what I use on most of mine because it gives me more back-end control. I can go directly into the server and do anything I need to do to make it work the way I want it to work. But for 99% of the people out there, that's not a necessary feature. All right, let's see. Any questions coming in? I think I just. What is Cpanel's capability? What does it do? I'm glad you asked that question. That's what we're going to get to in just a second. I'm going to show you how all that works, and we're going to actually set up a website. So I'm going to jump into that right now. And if you don't understand, then you can follow up with me shortly. Okay, so now we've talked about, we go back here to the registering a domain and getting a hosting account that includes Cpanel. So to give you an example of Cpanel, this is what a VPS looks like. So I've got a whole bunch of websites up here, and I'm going to delete this one. So these are the kind of things I can do from here. We're going to get rid of one. Let's see, terminate an account. And I'm going to get rid of this one and rebuild it. So that's this conf. So terminate. And that's this one. Okay, so I'm going to rebuild that confreg.com account as we go. And you'll be starting where I'm going to be in a second, because you won't have access to WHM most likely, where you can create these accounts. Where what I'm doing right now, you'll receive from your provider. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is go in and create this account, and I'm going to violate security here, but not really, because this is a demo account. I wouldn't want anybody getting in there because they could also possibly corrupt other accounts on the server. So it's nothing I should be totally passe about. But the point is, when I do this, you may see some passwords and usernames and things like that. That's fine for this demonstration, and it's going to be on video, but I'm going to go in and change it all or delete the site again after this session. So it's not really putting us at risk here. So what we had here was conferencereg.com. So I'm going to put that in as my domain. Now, I should point out that this domain's already been registered, and I already know that the name servers are pointing at this IP. So this IP address ends in 130, and I don't remember where I have this registered, probably on GoDaddy. But it's registered already and pointed here. So I know that I can set it up here. And then now it's going to generate this username, and I don't like this at all. So what happens is it by default tries to take the first part of this URL and make that the username. Well, if that's what you use, then you're giving a hacker 50% of what they need to get into your site. So at a minimum, take out a few letters in the middle and just put in some numbers or something so that it's not that. And then for your password, it's given a suggested password here, but I like to use advanced password generator. And there's a little thing you can do here too. So under advanced options, you can have a password that's 12 to 18 characters or 10 to 18. Why not go with 18? It's not something you're gonna have to type in. It just makes it that much stronger. Now, I'm gonna say I've copied here, but I don't really need to. And I'll show you why in a second. And you can pick your options here. Most important thing in a password is length. They've done security studies recently where they demonstrate mathematically that if you use the phrase, something like my pony went to the market on Sunday, and just type that in, lowercase, uppercase, whatever it is, simply because of the number of characters, it's far better than, say, your typical 8-character uppercase, lowercase symbols and numbers requirement that are a pain in the butt to type in. And so that's what some people have been doing lately. I just go ahead and use the generators, and I like using a password manager. And we'll talk about that more when we get into security. And again, I give just general tips as we go. But the tip for here, take the second it takes to make this the full length it can be, and then generate the password and say okay. So what that's doing is that's putting this password into here as the cPanel password, and now you're going to get that back in a second. So normally I'd say you copy that password and put it in your manager, but we're fine. And then I want to put in an email, and that's the admin email. Choose a package for how big it's going to be. I'm just going to go with, don't even know. That's more than sufficient. Okay. And then you can also select options manually if you want to. But again, you're going to have all this done for you. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. And that's all we need. So you can see that this is pointed to the name server, the mobiusnetwork.com. And I'm just leaving this here as a local mail exchanger and create. Now, the reason I didn't have to copy that password is it's going to give it to me here in a second. Okay, so this is the information that I just entered. We've got the new account set up. And so now what I'm going to do is just copy this for myself. While I'm working on a site, I like to put it in a document. And I don't want to say that this is best practices, because if somebody were to hack my Google account, they could possibly find this document and do something with it. So it would probably generally make more sense to do it with a Word document or something like that. But again, because I'm just doing this on a temporary basis and the site isn't real, I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to paste that here, and then I usually take whatever the domain name is, and I'll put that here. And I think there's an extra space there. May as well get rid of that. Okay. And so this is just a little note-keeping sheet. And you can see I copied this password. Now, the other reason you might want to keep this is what you would need if you were going to do FTP, which is a file transfer protocol. Some of you may be familiar with that, some not, since we can use File Manager, which is more simple and easier for people to use most of the time. I'm not going to get into FTP, but we can cover that later if anybody wants to talk about it. Okay, so now if we go back here and just review what we've done, we've registered a domain, we set up the web hosting account. In my case, that one's on the server that I've already used. The name servers were already pointing to the hosting account, so I didn't have to do that. And now we're going to upload WordPress files and create a database and install WordPress. So I'm going back to where we were. There's my file. Now if I go back to list accounts, here's the account. Now this is what you're normally going to see. This is cPanel. So you can see here, this is the link to get into cPanel. And this is what cPanel looks like. So this is what you might call the, not really the server side of your site, but it's controlling the files without going through any type of added interface. So this is allowing you to have an interface to the space on your server without giving you control of the server, only more control over your space. All right. So I should just show you, this is File Manager, and that's where we're going to do a lot of work later. But what we want to do right now is we want to create the database that we can install WordPress into. So within cPanel, you'll see this MySQL database wizard, MySQL, depends on how you want to pronounce it. Click the database wizard, and here we're just going to create anything, and it says 50 characters max. So I'm just going to type some gobbledygook in there. And then next step, 34 characters max, again, just put in whatever. And here again, now they're using a suggested password, and it's telling me that Chrome will save this, but I don't really want it to. We're not going to be logging back into here. So I'm going to use that password generator again. Advanced options, same concept. Let's go with 18, generate the password. This one I need to copy. If you don't do it and you lose it, you're going to have to come back and do this again. So I'm going to copy that, tell them I've copied that, and use the password and create user. Now I want to give my user privileges. And you'll note up here that we've successfully created a user, and we're going to give that user all privileges. Now what I do here, we're going to need this information, but most importantly, the password that I've already saved when we created it to create this database. So next step, it's done. So now what we need to do is upload WordPress files into the system. We've got the database created. Now we want to put the WordPress files into the database and create the files. So, create the site. So I just see another question in here. Are we logging onto MySQL right now? Well, MySQL is a database, or a database software, I should say. And what we just did was created a database on the MySQL platform. So you can log into a specific database of MySQL, but we're not going to need to do it except for installing WordPress. And all we're going to do is give it the credentials to install into that database. And so I think it'll make more sense as we finish these next steps here. So what I want to do now is download WordPress. And I thought I did. I'm going to take a slight, well, no, we'll come back to it. I don't want to break our path of movement here. So I'm going to WordPress.org, and I intended to talk about this a little bit more about why you should use WordPress and all the advantages of it. But I'll wait until we get this installed so that we can keep moving forward. And I think we'll have some time at the end to talk about that. So what I'm going to do is download WordPress. So you can see here, get WordPress. I also, by the way, suggest that everybody sign up for a free WordPress account. Now, not WordPress.com. We'll talk about the differences between those later. But WordPress.com is basically like Facebook or like Wix or Squarespace, where it's a hosted WordPress environment. So you pay monthly subscription fees, and as you want more features, you pay more. But you don't really own or control the server or any. It's well, I think you understand more as we go. What we're doing here with WordPress.org is we're installing all that software ourselves and completely controlling everything. So we can add any plugins that we want for anything that we want to do. But so I'd suggest before next week, if you click here on plugins, you're going to see that you can create an account. So where is that? Here it is, register or log in. Maybe you don't even have to click plugins. You can see up here, you can register or log in. I suggest each of you register for an account, just because what happens is you can save plugins as your favorites. So say I were logged in and I use bbPress a lot and I build a lot of websites, I can save that as a favorite. Then when I'm installing from the back end of my site, I can just click show me my favorite plugins and I can click them to install them from the back end. But you'll notice too, this is the big feature of why it's important that WordPress is used so frequently and so vastly around the world. More than 54,000 plugins available. So if you want to plug in for a calendar, for e-commerce, for scheduling events, for whatever it might be, chances are there's at least 3 or 4 options to choose from, and the vast majority of them are completely free. And so you think about that, there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of coding went into these plugins, and you get the advantage of that. So you can download them and use them at no cost. And what I mentioned WordPress getting even bigger because of something that just happened, may as well talk about this now since we're here. So this is a group called Built With, and they follow trends around the internet. So they're totally nonpartisan, non-platform biased. They just measure metrics. And for content management system usage, you can see that out of the top 1 million sites on the internet, WordPress has 49% of the market share. And if you go in even deeper, it's like, let's say the top 100,000, WordPress still has 32. The top 10,000, WordPress now 24. But you can see that out of even the very top 10,000 sites on the internet, WordPress has a large percentage of them, far larger than any other. And this is just, usually hand coding or something like that, just pure JavaScript sites. And even without being a CMS is the content management system. WordPress currently runs 34% of the sites on the internet. So it's a good thing to learn. And what that means is that when developers are out there making products, they're not going to go to something like a Joomla or a Squarespace or a Wix and say, I want to make products for them, because 50% of the market's in WordPress. So that's where the biggest market is. So that's where they develop for, and you end up with a lot more resources. Okay, so back to our WordPress install. What we're going to do is click here to get WordPress. And I'm going to download WordPress 5.2.3. Just put it on my desktop. And again, this internet's a little slow, so it's still downloading here. There we go. That looks done. And so now I'm going to go back to the Cpanel. And again, you could do this in FTP. Let's see what I want to do here. I'm going to need this information. So I'm going to, guess what I'll do is duplicate that tab. Let's see in that way. Yep. So I duplicated that tab because I want to be able to copy this in my next steps. Then I'm going back here to my first tab and just going back to the main Cpanel interface and clicking File Manager. And I could, if I would have lost that page, I can go back and look that information up. That name and username and database name are both available to me. Just the password's not. And you may recall I still have the password saved in my, let's see here, the communication problem. Let's see what's going on there. Shouldn't be anything here yet. We're very minimal. Maybe a CGI file or something. But what we want to do is upload anyway. So I'm just going to click upload. Looks like we might be having an internet problem here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to select the file. And that was the WordPress file that we just downloaded. And we're now uploading that into the database, or onto the server, we'll say. So now these are just files that are going in and just sitting there. They're not tied to a database. They can't really do much. Okay, so they're there now. And I can close this and get it out of the way. And now if I go to public HTML, you can see WordPress is there. And there are the CGI bin files that I was expecting earlier. So now we need to uncompress that file. So I'm going to select it and extract. And that's where we want it to go. And it's done. So if I don't think I'm going to have any more problems with it, I can go ahead and delete this. And that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so we have all of our WordPress files in here now. Now what I do for security reasons is if you leave your WordPress files right in public HTML, then hackers know exactly where they are. Or of course, if you have a folder called WordPress, they're very easy to find. So what I do here, and this is a security feature that's slightly more complicated than a normal install, but I think it's worth it. and you do it once, and it makes your site more secure. So I'm going to rename that folder, and I'm going to use Mobius. And so I'm calling that folder Mobius. Now, if I go back out to conferencereg.com, and I'm going to try to open that URL. Oops, conferencereg.com. That's not what I wanted. Did I spell it right? Yeah, it shouldn't be secure. There's no website there yet. Yeah, I think this is an internet error or one of those propagation errors that we talked about before. Excuse me. Let's double check things here. So I'm going to WHM conferencereg.com, and I'm still getting a 404. I don't know what's going on here, folks. Sorry to say. These are the kind of things you run into sometimes. What this should be showing me is a file system. And the only thing I can think of is that, let's try this. There we go. So that was a caching issue. As I mentioned before, remember how I just deleted a site and it was trying to find it and trying to find that exact same site that it found before. And that site doesn't exist anymore. So it took a little while for the caching between the host and the server through the browser, somewhere along the lines, for that to work. So the way I triggered it was by adding that folder Mobius. It had not seen that before. So it made it look it up again. And this is where we resolved it. Thank goodness. So you can see here you have options. We're going to choose English United States, continue, and it tells you right here what they're going to need. And we already know that, and we have all that. So let's go. Now it wants to know database name, username, password. Localhost is going to stay localhost. Table prefix, this is something else we changed for security reasons, because obviously WP is something that hackbots will look for. And you might think, why would anybody hack me? They will try. We can go into all that when we talk about our session on security. So never use just WP, make it a decent size prefix, and it always has to have this underscore. You'll see that very last character is an underscore. That has to stay there. You have to have an underscore. And so here, password, remember I saved it. So I'm gonna hit paste. There's that, I gotta get rid of that word password. I didn't realize that hang out there. Okay, so there's our password. And now all we need is the database name and the username. And you remember that I kept those available. So here's the username, and you want to copy all of this between those quotation marks. And you can see how hard that would be for even a hackbot to figure out. And we're going to go back to our page here. Oh, that's not it. Okay, let me close some of these as I get lost in this stuff. That I won't need anymore. This I can get rid of. And where'd our page go? Ah, okay, I'm going to take that out on the end to make it easy to find next time. So there was the username that we just copied. And now we want to go back and grab that database name, which is here. Again, everything between the quotation marks. Okay, so we should be good to go. And what's going to happen here when I hit submit is this is what lets WordPress connect to MySQL, the database we created, and that'll make that what's called a dynamic website where information can go back and forth between a database and the front end user. And so I hit submit, and there we go. All right, Sparky, you made it through this part of the installation. WordPress can now communicate with your database. If you are ready, time now to run the installation. And boom, we just created a WordPress site. So site title, I'll just call it conf reg demo site. And username, I'm going to go with the trusty old Bob Hollis, though that's not really wise, because it can, why use my name? If I could use something the equivalent of a password, then you've got like 2 passwords. So I want to say that, but again, I'm not too worried because this is just a demo site that'll never go live or have any real impact. And so there's an email. And because of what we're doing right now, I'm going to say discourage search engines from indexing this site. And you'd often want to do that when you're currently first developing a site, because you want to get the whole thing set up the way you want it before search engines index it. And that way you can control the SEO right from the beginning. Okay, so we've got that set up. Now we're going to say install WordPress. Ta-da, we're there. And so now Google wants to know if I want to save this password. I'll go ahead and do that. And you can see too that I have, now this is wrong. This is the database thing. So I'm going to say no thanks there. That was my password manager. We'll talk more about that later. So now I'm going to log in and see that site for the first time that we just created. So my username again was Bob Hollis, and I want to make sure that that's right. So I'm going to do this, paste, and remember me, and log in. Ta-da, it worked. And here again, I'm going to save this now in my password manager, and we'll talk about password managers more specifically in our security session. Okay, so now we've got a WordPress site. It was that quick, and now we can control the world. Okay, so there are some more things we have to do here because of the security thing we did. And again, this might look a little bit complicated. Don't let it scare you because it only has to be done once. And remember, I'm here to help you. So if you need help through these stages, I'm going to go ahead and close this now. I think we're done with that. And this I could, just wipe out and get rid of. And in fact, why not? Because we're not going to use that. And if I needed it, I could come back in here for this. But I don't like just leaving it hang out there anyway. So I'm going to delete that. And now be careful, as I know, if somebody were to hack in, you can go ahead and look at past revisions. So they can even find things that are deleted. So you do want to be careful. Okay. And I'm just closing out some other panels here. This one now you'll notice is still in that Mobius folder. So this is one of the things we want to look at. So if I were to go into that folder, you can see there are all of our WordPress files. But what we want to do is there's this index.php file, and we need to copy that back here. So I'm going to say copy. Then we're going to put a copy of that index.php into the public HTML. And this is the part that's a little bit tricky just because what we're doing is hiding the WordPress installation from hackers. At least nothing's foolproof. It's just one more step that you can do. And so now I'll go in here to public HTML, index.php, and I'm going to edit that file to just do one thing. I'm clicking edit. And in here, I just need to put the word Mobius because that's the name of the folder where we're hiding WordPress. And now I can change that. And I could show you here too, before I make that change, watch what happens now without making that change. .com. Here we go again. So that's because of, again, it's just a caching issue. If I were to go Mobius, that's the website. So you can see right now, everything's in that subfolder Mobius. But by putting that address back here where we want it, whoop, in the Cpanel, right here, and now hit save, now it's going to work on either end, regardless of whether or not it's there, without the Mobius. So I'll hit close, and we need to go into one more place here. So here's our site admin side, and we go into settings general, And you can see here the WordPress address is that with the Mobius. The site address, we don't want that Mobius part. So we're going to get rid of that and save. And we may as well put in our UTC while we're back here, which is LA. I did it. There we go. And all the rest of that's probably fine. Okay, so we've made that. I don't like that, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Save again. So now we've got our site. So this is the WordPress site. Now there's another step that we want to go through here that a lot of people don't, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool stuff and something that'll make your site a lot more robust. And what that is we're going to integrate Cloudflare, and I'll show you what that is. So Cloudflare is completely free. I'm already logged in here, but if you were to go out to just Cloudflare without the dashboard, let me do that. I'm just going to go to cloudflare.com. Cloudflare offers a free SSL certificate, tons of security features, and caching that they say will keep your site online even if your server goes down. And it makes it load faster everywhere in the world because it basically keeps a copy of your website in the cloud. And you don't have to pay for it. So it's great. So what I do, remember we had our name servers pointed to the server here, and then we installed the site. What I do then is I go into Cloudflare, and I already have my account open here, and I want to add a site. And the site we're going to add is conferencereg.com. So conferencereg.com. And it's going to scan. And it wants to know what plan I want. I think I'll take the free one. All right. Now this site's a little bit too new. So I'm going to come back here in a little while. Once again, this is a propagation thing. So it takes a little while for all these records to propagate through the internet. What normally happens when you hit that last button that I hit, it pulls in all of these records. Once it has these records in, it gives you another name server that you can use. And you take that name server and you update it at your server registration. And what that does is it points at the Cloudflare instead of your website. But Cloudflare points to your website. So it's basically acting like a security wall between the world and your site and your server. So when somebody comes in and looks at your site, they're really looking at the version stored on Cloudflare. They're not even touching your server. And that can be really important also for extending your services and providing good user experience. For example, one of the sites that I built is for a magazine. And when they send out their weekly issue and their weekly news updates, suddenly their site gets slammed. I mean, we're talking like 10,000 people an hour easy. And what would happen is the site would start to crash or move slowly at that point. So I put them on Cloudflare, and we didn't have to increase our server resources at all, which would have cost a lot more money. And now when that rush period comes, 90% of those hits don't even touch the server. They're all served by Cloudflare. So Cloudflare, it's not precisely the case, but it's basically the case for description purposes. They keep a copy of your website stored in the cloud on all their servers. And if somebody in LA goes to pull up my website, they're going to be pulling it up from a Cloudflare server in LA. If somebody in New York pulls up my site, they're pulling it up from a Cloudflare server in New York. And so it increases the speed at which the site can load, no matter where somebody is in the world. So Cloudflare is really cool. And I'll let this take for a little while, and I'll do it before the next class, or we'll do it in the next class. And I'll show you all the different features that it offers. Here, this is a brand new site, so it's not going to have much in here, but I can give you an idea of what's available. And this is showing DNS records here. All right, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll get back to this installation, and then we'll come back to that next week. So we don't need this anymore. And now we've got our site up here, and I can go anywhere I need to there, and it's all working fine. And then we're going to get started on security plugins and the rest of the plugins and things like that. Let me check for a question, see if there's anything out there. Any new questions? No, I'm not seeing any hands and no new questions coming in. So we will keep moving forward. So now we've got our WordPress installation, but there are no features there, and there's no real theme. And we'll dig into that in more detail next week. But I may as well start showing you now, because if any of you are this far along, then you might want to start loading things up. One of the first things I do is I don't put my security in right away. And that's because sometimes you put your security in and it takes a little while to get trained basically on what kind of functions are expected on the site. It's almost like having your own security AI, where when things happen as normal, then everything's just fine. But if they see something that they don't think is common, then they might think one of your own plugins is trying to hack your site, and they start blocking the plugin. If you put in all of your plugins and everything else first, then you add security. It sees what's supposed to be in there as soon as it's installed, and you tend to have fewer problems. So I normally do it before the end of the first night, because I don't want a site that's half done to get hacked, but I don't usually put it in until after all my other plugins are in. And we haven't talked much about what plugins are, or even what's back here. So I'll go through a quick review of what each of these items are and how they function, and then we'll put in a plugin and we'll put in a theme. So any of you who are already this far can continue doing that sort of thing before the next class. But when we get to the next class, we'll go through a lot more specific plugins around what to use for which functions. And sometimes the challenge is not whether or not there is a function, but because there are so many, you don't know which one to use. So a recent update that took place in WordPress changed it from a more traditional editing system that looked more like editing Microsoft Word page. So managing a page on WordPress was about the same as setting up a page in Microsoft Word, a regular text editor type of thing. But then they saw what was going on with web design, and they moved to like a block system called Gutenberg. But most people who've used WordPress haven't been very happy with that. And I've kind of got around most of them using some different tools that we're going to get into much deeper down the road when we start putting in plugins and really building out the front end of the website. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with just a few. So first of all, when you first log in, you're going to see you've got your dashboard, and you can control a lot of things there. So you can control which of these panels you want to see. This is just a general welcome page. It might not hurt to read through these the first time you've come in if you've not done it before. I'm just going to dismiss it. You can move these panels around to where you want. They always have one panel here with WordPress news and events, quick drafts. So remember, WordPress was initially created as a blogging tool, and I've been using it since it came out. But now it's become a full-fledged content management system that's more or less dominating the internet. And so it still has some relic artifacts from that era, such as the quick draft. So if you wanted to come in and create a post, you can just put in a title, type what's on your mind, and hit save, and that would put it in there. But you can do a lot more if you go into the real tools. It shows activity. It shows at a glance dashboard how many posts, comments, and pages, what theme you're running right now, search engines discouraged, again, the upcoming events. And once we're done with all of our plugins, there'll be a lot more tables and features and graphs here if we want them. But you can also decide what you want here. So if you go up to screen options, you can click to add or remove anything. So let's say I want to get rid of whatever WordPress events and move this up here. I just unclicked it, And if I want that welcome back, you can do that to see that message. And there, so that's a lot more clean and streamlined for me. And I just like it less cluttered. And I usually put in just the things I want. And once we have more tools in, like I said, we'll have things like Google Analytics dashboards and things like that that have a lot more meaning and actionable intelligence, so to speak, where you can look at things and make decisions from them. Home, you're just going to see the same thing. That's all that is. Updates, this is where you'll see if any plugins need to be updated, and that's very important. Most of the reasons, I shouldn't say that without knowing it for sure, a large percentage of the reasons that a plugin is updated is that there's a security vulnerability that's been exposed. And so if you don't update your plugins, I can just about guarantee that you're going to get hacked. And what happens is, if you go out on the dark web, which I don't recommend if you don't know what you're doing, for one thing, you need to get it on Tor, and you need to be very careful, or you'll come back with malware, or worse. Well, I guess certain types of malware are worse than others, but none of it's good. But don't go there. But if you were to go there, and I do it because I do research to prevent people from being hacked, you can see everything that's out there and available to anybody who wants it. So what will happen is, say somebody finds a vulnerability in a specific WordPress plugin, they'll post that vulnerability on the dark web on hacker sites with how to exploit it. And if they do, then you build a hackbot, and the hackbot goes and searches the internet and looks for any website using that plugin. Then it'll run the hack on the plugin, get inside, and take over your site. And it's not a pretty thing. If that ever happens to any of you, just contact me, and I can help you get rid of the hackers and clean out the malware. But it can happen, and every single one of my sites, there are hacking attempts on every one of my sites every single day, and that's just a fact. So you have to just expect it. And people say, well, if I have a site where I'm selling pet supplies, why would somebody want to hack me? I'm not a bank or financial institution. Well, that doesn't matter. What they want is your server space and your anything else they can get out of there. So what they might do is, if they were to hack you, they can hide files inside your site that uses your site, say, as a mail station. And they might add, or they put a page up that you don't even know is there, that's selling, Viagra or whatever, whatever they sell these days, counterfeit stuff. It's usually not anything that they can sell on the open market, and they're just not good peeps. So you don't want to let them in. So make sure that you keep your plugins updated. And when we'll go through that more, you'll see, when it needs to be updated. And we're also going to have a backup plugin, and that backup plugin will allow you to back up your whole site first. And you can also automate a lot of that if you're willing to pay a little bit for some tools to do that with. All right, so that's WordPress updates. Posts, these are what WordPress was first known for. And there's two ways to create, well, two basic ways to display content in a WordPress site. One is through posts, and that's where you're coming in and put in your daily updates or whatever, and you can show all your posts on a specific page, or you could show them in different pages based on what category they've been assigned to. And that's where you can do updates. So if you had some type of reviews you were doing on whatever it might be, live streaming the Grammys or something like that, or sports, if you're following a football game and talking about what's going on next, you can use something like that for it. Generally, information that changes relatively frequently is done in posts. Information that's going to stay on the site more permanently, like your homepage or something like that, or a contact page, that's done as pages and not posts. So here, if you want to make a post, you just click add a post. Now, normally I would have created a category first, but see now here, they're wanting me to use this block system. If you're comfortable with it, feel free to do it. But most people like their old system better. And I can show you that right now. So, well, we'll get there. Might as well walk through this first. So you can add your posts, and I'm not going to do it in the block system because I think you'll all be using another editor soon. I don't want to confuse you. You can add categories and then assign the post to categories when you create it. So you can create categories and categories here to organize information. And that's important to do for things like displaying different categories on different pages, or if you have posts on specific subjects that you want to go out into a newsletter, you can do it that way. And tags, the same thing. So you can create tags that are like categories and show different information. So hashtags, you know, that type of thing. And you can also then show a tag cloud on your site. So if a lot of people are posting on different topics and they're tagging certain words, you can see which words are tagged the most in a visual representation of the website and information. This is the media library, which I still think is really probably WordPress's biggest weakness in my opinion, just because they don't have a native ability to use folders. And I like to organize things in folders. So if I have some event, I want to put all my items into a folder for that event. And WordPress doesn't really function that way. So you can put in add-ons to use folders, but it would be nice if it were in the core of the system. But to upload something into a post or a page or just directly into the library, you can just click add new, and then you can select a file. Let me see if I've got something sitting out here that I could use. Here's a Santa Cruz Feedstock report. I'm sure you're all interested in that. This happens to be a PDF. And I'll do this here, I'll do this one. It's a JPEG. Okay, so there's the JPEG file, the image file that's uploaded. Now, if I went and looked again, there it is. And if I were making a post or something, I can add it in. Well, I should be able to. Not, well, you still can. It's just I'm not too fond of that new editor either. I haven't given it enough time though. It might be okay. But for now, we're going to go back to basics. So I'm going to go in here to plugins, and here's the classic editor, which you can see now has 5 million plus active installs from everybody who got upset when they changed the editor over to Gutenberg. A lot of people who'd been with WordPress since it started weren't too happy about that. So we're going to activate it. And there's classic editor. This one we'll come back to. Hello Dolly is a bit of a gimmick. This guy, Matt Wollenweg, who started WordPress, he was a student at UT Austin, and he just wrote all this code himself and then put it out there in the world as open source. But don't feel too bad for the guy. I mean, a lot of us are about open source because it's about helping people with technology, not hoarding it and copywriting it and say nobody else can use it unless they pay me an exorbitant amount of money. But he's doing just fine. Salesforce.com just recently invested $300 million into a company called Automatic, which was started by Matt. But so Hello Dolly just puts up a quote from Hello Dolly. Any place, it just puts it up there randomly every day. You see a different lyric. So there's really no reason for it to be there, except little cutesy, I guess. Akismet is a anti-spam tool that's especially important if you're going to have a blog and do posts. And you have to you set up a free account with Akismet and then put your API in. And I've got my API. We don't need to do that right now. I don't think it'd be a good use of time. But we'll get back to that when we focus on plugins next week. Comments, this is where, if you are putting up posts and people make comments on the post, they would show up here. A page looks similar to a post, and you'll see how different that is now that we've put in that classic editor. So if I say add new now for a page, you can see now that this has more of what you'd expect to see. And this little thing can drive you crazy. You'll think, what happened to all my tools? That's what happened to all your tools. So when you click here, it opens up this whole second layer. And you don't want to be adjusting everything really with these though. And that might be one reason they hide them here. You really want to use this. And what happens is when you create your theme, you make settings for heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. There's only 6 headings: paragraph text, pre-formatted, excerpt, and paragraph is what you'd think it would be. That's just your normal text in a paragraph. The headings are what you want for your titles. And heading 1 and heading 2 are what search engines look for. So those are especially important. But from a design standpoint, you don't want one size and color text on one page and another size and color and font on another page. It looks completely sloppy. So in the process of you doing your theme and setting what you want all these to be, you should create what's called a style guide in marketing, where you say, I'm going to use this font, this typeface, this size heading, and this weight for, and you set what it's going to be for all of these, and then you make sure that everything on your site is assigned to one of these, whether it's a paragraph or one of these, based on the size that you want. And that way your site will look much more professional. So you put in your page title. I'll just call this demo page. And now I want to, now one thing that you want to remember here when you're putting this in, always keep search engine optimization in mind, because what it does is it kind of extends that as your URL for your permalink, and that can affect search engine optimization. So make sure you name it something that's going to help search engines find what you want people to find. Then you can, put in any text that you want here, and you can add an image. So let's say I want to add an image. I click Add Media, and it's going to show me. I can click that top tab and say any files already in my library, which is this one. Or again, I can upload a file right into it, and that'll get added to my library and added to the page. For now, I'm going to say let's use this, and I can decide what to call it. When you're doing images, a few things you want to keep in mind. Again, always search engine optimization, but also accessibility. So we'll talk more about that when we're doing themes, but I always make sure that my sites meet the specs for Section 508 of government standards for digital assets, so that they're accessible to people. And what I mean by that is some people, for example, use screen readers if they have vision difficulty. And so you want to make sure things like alt text are in there. So it looks like this image is, I would call this something like Santa Cruz Feedstock report. If any of you are curious what that is I do a lot of work with the state of California, and the Cal Recycle is the agency that oversees recycling. And within CalRecycle, they have these areas called recycling market development zones, where they provide business support assistance and interest-free or very low-interest loans to businesses that are going to use, let's say, carpet. So that we have a big problem with all this carpet that's coming out of people's homes and going into landfills, which is the last thing you want. So if a business were to come in and say make, I don't know, patio furniture or coats or something out of carpet or flower bags, whatever it might be, then they would give them low cost loans. And you can see there the feedstock is that. So it's a report for Santa Cruz around what type of feedstock is available to somebody who might want to start a company. But the important part for us here is you always want to make sure you have that alt text in. And that's what you'll see if you've ever hovered over something and a little yellow bubble pops up with some words in it. That's the alt text. You want your title to be search engine friendly. I'm going to go ahead and take those underscores out. And I always put it in the description too, because why not? It probably won't help with SEO here, but the title and the alt text definitely do. And now down here you have some options for alignment. If you say none, it's just going to sit there wherever you put it for the most part. Or you can align left, center, or right. If you align left, it's going to word wrap right. If you align center, there won't be any words on either side. They go above and below. If you align right, it's going to word wrap left or none. I'm going to say align left for now, just to show you. And you can put in whatever size it is. Usually there's many options if it started bigger, but since that's so small, it's not giving it to us. Okay, so there's my image. Now see how I have it aligned left? That means that I can do word wrapping. So if I were typing a lot of text here, it's going to wrap around the image and look more professional. If I were to center it, and I can do that many places, here or here, you can see the text jump to above or below, and it won't allow any on either side. If I were to right wrap, or yeah, same thing. Sorry, getting some flutter here on the screen, but you get the idea. If I were to text wrap left, then I just set it to the right. So if you're having any issues with images, that's all you need to know to make sure they work right for you. Okay, so that's the basic overview of the media library. Pages we've talked about, comments, appearance. This is where you'll do things like themes, widgets, and menus. And we'll go ahead and install a theme just to show you how easy it is. And one of the things I'd recommend if you have the time, if you don't have to have your site up right away, play with it before you put it live. And I'll show you in a little bit. We'll add a plugin for maintenance here so you can take it offline until you're ready to put it online. But don't be afraid to play around because that's really how you learn. My kids, my oldest daughter just got her PhD in human-computer interaction. And when she was young, I mean, we're talking, barely able to walk yet. She'd come up and just want to bang on my keyboard. At first, I was like, "Keep the kid away from my computer. This is crazy." And it was my work computer, and I was home. And so then I thought, wait a minute, I don't want her to have that attitude towards computers. So, of course, I used that as an excuse to get myself a new one. And then I gave her my old one, and I put one of those plastic covers over the keyboard. I loaded it up with all these math and fun games, Reader Rabbit, Math Rabbit, all this stuff. Back from the 90s. And so both of my daughters could use a computer sooner than they could talk. And they just played with it and banged on it and had fun. And as she got older, I'd see her sitting there for hours playing these stupid games. And I said, "Victoria, what are you doing? You have to do something that's you can turn into a career. Don't sit there and play games all day." And so what does she do now? She's a human computer interactive specialist and doing quite well for herself. So I'm pretty happy with her. And but that's the idea, is that if you make it play instead of burden and don't let it stress you out, it can be a lot of fun. And if you don't have to have the site online right away, you can take risks. You're not going to break anything. If you break something, I can fix it for you. But chances are you're not really breaking it. You just missed where a setting is or something like that. It's pretty bulletproof once you've got it going. So I want to show you what I'm talking about with themes and how easy those are. If we were to take a look at what we've got now, and by the way, you'll notice the site says not secure. That's because we don't have an SSL certificate in there. But we're going to take care of that through Cloudflare by the next class. All right, let's go pull that up. So here you can see this is just the standard WordPress theme. This is called the 2019, and it's just a basic bare bones. It's got some widgets over here with some things in it. And that looks like it's where it's putting posts, if there were any. Hello, welcome. This is your first post editor. Get started. Okay, we're going to change the way this looks really fast. So if we go back here again to, we'll go into appearance and themes. So again, here is the standard theme. Now I usually get rid of these because if you're not going to use them, I always leave one in, because if your theme that you're using crashes, it's going to revert back to something. And you always want one in that you know is good and it's going to work, so that you can easily interface with your site again. But I usually get rid of the redundant ones. Otherwise, what happens is you're just spending your time updating them all the time for no reason. They come out with new updates all the time, and that's all you're doing. That's the only purpose they serve, is something to update. And you should also, as a general rule, not have any plugins or themes back here that you're not using, because that's just another vector for hackers. And why expose yourself that way if you don't need to? So what we're going to do is take a look at themes here. And you can see that's the one we just have in there, like we've talked about. And now I want to do add new. Ta-da! So you can see that all of these, I mean, we're just obviously looking at the top of the first page of thousands and thousands of free themes. Now, before we get too excited about that, I don't like any of them. The reason is that when you buy a theme like this, you're kind of stuck with what they give you. And a lot of times they put things into the themes that otherwise could run on a modular basis and be controlled individually. So for example, I can add a plugin as a slider, whereas a theme might have a slider built into the theme. and I use those features within the theme. But if I want to change the theme or something, my slider's already built into it as well. And I'd much rather have all that stuff separated so I can change themes without changing the tools that I like to use, and just have all those plugins in its plugins and have the theme in its kind of a coat of paint, and then you can do what you want with it. But just to show you how it works, and that might not be true for all of you, I can say that for two reasons. One is that I have other software I use to build themes, so I can create themes in a WYSIWYG environment where I'm basically laying them out, and you don't need any code to do it. And I'll show you the software that I use. I think it costs like $100 or something, and you might not want to spend that, but you're not going to need to either. So I'll show you the software I use when we get into themes, and you can buy that software and use it yourself to create your own themes, which gives you a lot more flexibility. Or the other thing we're going to be looking at and spending a lot of time with when we do themes is what's called a page building tool. And you can use that page building tool in a way that it works that you don't need a theme. Any theme works. So you can have something very basic, but you're going to change your whole page layout and all of that with that tool anyway. So let's say we wanted to just change the theme to this. I can say install, and I could also hit preview if I wanted to, but let's just do that. And I just picked one randomly. I don't know if it's a good theme or not. And once you choose it, you need to activate it. And when you activate it, now it's telling me here, see, for example, ultimate responsive image slider, begin installing plugin, dismiss this notice. I'm going to dismiss the notice because I'm not going to use it anyway. Okay, but now you can see that this theme is the active theme. And if we go back out here and refresh, remember all this content. So this is basically a post right here. Now if I refresh, there's my post, only the whole theme looks different. It looks like a brand new website, doesn't it? And this is where our menu items would be in our title. So as we add pages and menu items, they would go right in here. Here's some widget space over here. But there's a lot involved with that too, because let's say I don't really want my front page to be my post. I'm going to use a different page called a home page, for example. So if I go pages, add new, I can just call it home page. And I've gotten away from actually using something called a home page. I'll usually make either the about or whatever my action items are on my home page. And if somebody clicks on the main header or something, it'll take them right back to that landing page that they came in on. But I don't usually call it home page anymore. All right, but now I've got that page there, and I'm going to save that, and there's no content there. But the reason I wanted to show you that is I can also go down here under appearance and go into menus. And here's home page. This is the one I just created. I'll get rid of this one, remove, I'll leave that called menu 1. And I'm going to click create menu just to have the menu there. And then we can make that in the primary position. And if I wanted to, I can say automatically add new top level pages to this menu. But I'm not, because I want to show you how to do that. And so I'll hit save menu. And now you see if I go back out here, it only had sample page. If I refresh, now it's got home page, sample page. And that would take me either one. There's home page, sample page. But you'll notice that sample page is also, it has my post there. And let's say I don't want my home page to be post. So I can go back in here to settings. Where's our settings? Here we are. And reading. And I say, do you want your home page to be latest posts? No, I want it to be a static page. And I can pick my home page right there. And then I can pick my post page. So I might have another page that I created called blog or something like that. And I would make that my blog page and save changes. So now if we go back out and refresh, there's our home page with no posts, and we can put all our homepage content there. Now we're going to be using a completely different theme and all of that, so we don't need to get into that. And we're hitting 8 o'clock. So just to review, we've gone through each of these steps, I believe. So we created the database, we installed WordPress, started to add Cloudflare. We need to come back, and then we'd repoint these name servers, and we'll do this part in the next section. And we did get into start building the site. So that's where we are for tonight. Let me check our panel here, see if there are any final questions or anything. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to be logging out here shortly, but again, I'll be putting more information into those folders and sharing them with you. I have all of your email addresses, and I'm going to email so you can make personal contact with me. And what I'll also do is create a form for scheduling. So somebody just asked, when can we meet with you in person? Let me clarify. I'm not sure if you mean in person, face to face, or if you mean one-on-one. So if you mean in person, face to face, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and DC for the next few weeks, and we'll be back in California at the end of the first week of October. We might be able to think at the classroom, but more importantly, I meet with people one-on-one all the time using the system where we can talk back and forth. So I'm going to create a scheduling tool, and if you'd like to meet with me, you can fill out the form and send it, and we can get something booked, and we'll do one-on-one to get you caught up with whatever you need to catch up on. How will we access the folders? In the email that I send you, I'm going to send you a survey link also, and in that survey link, I'm going to ask if you have a Gmail address. If you do, I'm going to share that folder with you through your Gmail address. And what will happen is you'll get an email saying this folder has been shared with you, and you'll be able to click on that folder and add or remove information. And then if you don't have a Gmail address and don't want to open an account, again, they're free though, then I can send you a link that's accessible to anybody that has the link. So when you click that link, you'll go to the folder and you'll be able to edit, add, remove files. It also means if you accidentally give that link to somebody, they could do the same thing and just wipe out your files. So the security is the link. As long as nobody has that link, then nobody can get in, and you don't have to open Gmail. But other than that, that's how you would do it through Google Drive. And I can show that in more detail. Like I said, I'll be setting them up and sending the information to everybody before the next class. And so we can go through that if anybody has any questions in the next class. Excuse me. And then again, one-on-one, I think I just answered that one. When I send information around, it's also going to have a form where you can request to schedule some time, and we'll get it booked. And I'm on East Coast time right now, so it's a little after 11 at night. But most of the time, I'm on the West Coast sitting in the mountains. And either way, I can meet. It's just my hours might not be the same as yours for the next couple of weeks. Okay, that looks like that's about it. So I hope you all learned a little bit tonight. And if any of you have already this far, again, I apologize for moving ahead faster. And for those of you who got lost, I apologize for moving too fast. But we will get those of you who are not this far yet caught up with some one-on-one time. And those of you who have more detailed questions, I'm more than happy to answer those too. So we'll get one-on-one time together as needed, and we can get into some more advanced issues on the side, and we'll walk everybody else forward together. So somebody just said, thank you here. Thank you all. I really have fun with this, and it's nice being able to do it online in this part of the country, but I miss being face to face. So I look forward to getting back together there. And I see another question here. How do I re-listen to this session? I think I showed it earlier. You're going to have, you have a link to this page right here. I'll send this right out again. So it'll take a little while to process, because what happens is after I close the meeting, GoToWebinar processes it, and then they're going to add it. And the link that I just sent out to all of you in the chat box, you can click that link, and once it's processed, you'll be able to access it right on that page. And I also plan on putting some of these up on the California Capitol website on a password protected page that you all have access to, but that might take a little while. The one that will be processed tonight should be available to you by morning at the latest. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you to get some really nice sites done. And we'll see you again, or talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.